Have you ever noticed that no matter what you achieve, it never seems to stay with you? You reach a goal, you improve yourself, you work harder than before, and for a moment, you feel relief. But only for a moment. Then your mind quietly asks, is this really enough? And before you can enjoy where you are, you're already looking at someone ahead of you. Someone smarter, more successful, more attractive, more accomplished. Most people think this is ambition. But what if it isn't? What if the reason you keep chasing improvement has very little to do with growth, and much more to do with a fear you've never fully noticed? A fear that if you stop moving, you might become forgettable. Problem Deep Dive. The experience usually begins in small moments. You're scrolling through your phone. A friend gets promoted. Someone launches a business. A former classmate buys a house. And suddenly, your day feels different. Nothing in your life changed, yet somehow, everything feels smaller. Psychologists call this social comparison. Your brain constantly evaluates your position relative to others, not because it's vain, because for most of human history, belonging to the group meant survival. Your nervous system evolved to monitor status, connection, and relevance. The problem is that modern life gives your brain thousands of people to compare against every day. And comparison doesn't just affect your mood, it changes your identity. You stop asking, what do I want? And start asking, how do I measure up? Relationships become scoreboards. Success becomes proof. Rest begins to feel dangerous. Even your self-talk changes, not into outright hatred, something quieter. I should be further ahead. Why can't I be like them? What's wrong with me? But underneath those thoughts, there is usually a deeper question. A question most people never say out loud. I'm not exceptional? Do I matter? And that question changes everything. Here's what makes this difficult. It's a part of you that never feels enough is not trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you. Many people treat self-criticism as evidence of weakness. But psychologically, it often begins as an adaptation, a strategy. Somewhere along the way, your brain learned a rule. If I improve, I'll be valued. If I stand out, I'll be safe. If I'm memorable, I won't be ignored. So achievement became more than achievement. It became emotional protection. The problem is that protection strategies rarely know when to stop. They continue operating long after the original threat is gone. And that's why reaching the next milestone rarely creates peace. Because peace was never the thing being pursued. Safety was. But safety and achievement are not the same thing. And your brain often confuses them. Psychological mechanism to understand why this happens. Imagine your mind as a lighthouse. Most people assume the lighthouse is searching for success. It isn't. It's searching for danger. And one of the dangers your brain is especially sensitive to is social irrelevance. Neuroscience shows that social exclusion activates many of the same brain regions involved in physical pain. Your brain treats rejection seriously, sometimes surprisingly seriously. Because being disconnected from the tribe once carried real consequences. So your mind develops a simple mental model. Visibility equals safety. Importance equals security. Achievement equals belonging. The problem is that this model creates a moving target. Every accomplishment briefly reduces uncertainty. Then your brain adapts. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. What felt extraordinary yesterday becomes normal today. The brain resets the baseline, and the chase begins again, like walking toward a horizon that keeps moving. Not because you're failing, because that's how the system was designed. Which raises an important question. If achievement alone can't solve the feeling of not being enough, what actually can? Practical Framework 1. Separate growth from worth. The first step is learning to distinguish improvement from value. Your brain naturally merges them together, but they are different things. When worth depends on achievement, every setback feels personal. When worth is separate, setbacks become information, not identity. A simple practice: when you fail at something, ask, instead of, "What does this say about me?" This reduces self-threat and keeps the brain in a learning state rather than a defensive state. 2. Notice comparison triggers. Behavioral psychology shows that awareness interrupts automatic patterns. Most comparison happens unconsciously. So begin noticing when it starts. After certain social media accounts, certain conversations, certain environments. The goal isn't avoidance, it's visibility. For example, if you notice feelings of inadequacy after scrolling for 20 minutes, pause and label it. My comparison system is active. Naming the process reduces its emotional intensity. 3. Build evidence from your own timeline. Your brain often compares your behind-the-scenes life to someone else's highlight reel. A more useful comparison is past you versus present. You, every week, write down 3 ways you've changed, learned, or improved. Not impressive achievements. Real changes. This strengthens self-referenced evaluation, which is associated with greater psychological stability. For practice being ordinary, this sounds strange, but it may be the most powerful step. Many people secretly fear being average, yet that fear keeps the nervous system trapped in constant performance mode. Try doing something without optimizing it. A walk, a hobby, a conversation, no audience, no measurement, no proof. This teaches the brain that existence does not always require performance. And that lesson is deeply calming. Think back to the lighthouse. For years, it may have been scanning the horizon for signs that you were falling behind, searching for evidence that you needed to become more, do more, achieve more. But perhaps the real shift is not turning the lighthouse off. It's changing what it's looking for. Instead of asking, "Am I impressive enough?" he begins asking, "Am I living in alignment with what matters to me?" One question creates endless chasing. The other creates direction. And direction feels very different from pursuit. Maybe you'll still have moments when you compare yourself. Most people do. The goal isn't to eliminate that part of being human. The goal is to recognize what it's really asking for, because underneath the endless striving, there is often a person who simply wants reassurance that they matter. Not because they're extraordinary, not because they're unforgettable, but because they're here. And perhaps that's the strange truth your mind has been missing. The fear of being forgettable was never solved by becoming more visible. It softens when you stop treating your existence as something that must be earned. And maybe tonight, instead of asking whether you're enough, you can sit with a different question. What if being enough was never something you had to become? What if it was something you had to notice?